how to keep your Boaz once you get Boaz. I think the story of Ruth and Boaz is its own cottage industry. I didn't get married until I was 49 years old, so I've heard Ruth and Boaz preached about every which way Ruth and Boaz can be preached. But this morning, I don't want to talk about Ruth. I want to talk about Naomi. And if I had to put a subject or a title to this message, it would be, "It Ain't Over Yet." It ain't over yet. So if you're by a sister and she's not convinced, just look at her and just say, "It ain't over yet."
It ain't over yet.
It ain't over yet. You can even look at a brother in his face and you can just say, "Brother, it ain't over yet." It may be many things, but it ain't over yet. So we can go to, I'm going to be reading, I have the Amplified Classic version, so this will read a little bit differently if you're reading out of other scriptures, but if you can go to the first slide, you will not be able to see that, but I will read from the book of Ruth, and I'm starting at chapter 1, and I'm starting at verse 1, and again I have the Amplified Classic. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem of Judah went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he, his wife, and his 2 sons. The man's name was Elimelech, and his wife's name was Naomi. And his 2 sons were named Mahlon, invalid, and Chilion, pining. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem of Judah. They went to the country of Moab and continued there. But Elimelech, who was Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. And they took wives of the women of Moab. The name of one was Orpah, and the name of the other Ruth. They dwelt there about 10 years. And Mahlon and Chilion, also both of them, so the woman died, both of them, so the woman was bereft of her 2 sons and her husband. So when the Lord, and actually it was very funny when Lady D, I would say that when she asked me to do matters of the heart, but that would be telling a lie. Lady D came and informed me that I would be doing matters of the heart. It was funny because it was on a day that I was really just before the Lord and was having a tough time. She said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I don't mean to be insensitive, but you're doing matters of the heart this year." And I looked at her. And she said, "So I'm sorry, but yeah, that's it." And I said, "You know, Lady D, I love you and I respect order and I would never be disrespectful or irreverent, but did you pray about this?" And she said, "I did, and you're doing it, so that's the conversation." So, and I left out and I got in the car, and by the time I got to Alberta, the Lord had whispered in my ear, "Naomi." I said, "Naomi." So I said, okay, I guess I'm going to preach on Naomi. And usually when we think about Naomi, because so much of the emphasis in the book of Ruth is on Ruth and Boaz, when we think about Naomi, we usually think about her in the context of being an old widowed woman. We think about her as somebody that's worn out, and somebody, she's lost everything. So most people pass over her once they find out that she's bitter. And so the Lord told me, take a closer look at who Naomi is. And oftentimes, if you look at the names, especially in biblical history, if you look at the names of somebody, you can get a very good idea of the context of who they are. Just by looking at names of who and where they are. You can form a context of kind of who they are deeper than just looking at what people say they are. So the Lord had me go a little bit deeper into Naomi, and if you go to my first slide, we look at the name of Naomi. Naomi means beautiful and pleasant, agreeable, sweet, my delight. Now that's a little bit different than what you think about Naomi, but Naomi was a very popular woman. She was beautiful. Said that she was agreeable. She said, my delight. That means she was the Lord's delight. Go to the next slide. Then there's her husband, Elimelech. Now, Elimelech's name means God is king. He was a devout man. Her first son's name is Malon. His name meant sickly, so obviously there was something that was going on with him. But her second child, Killian, meant tiny, as if he's competitive, complete, finished, and accomplished. So when you're looking at this, you see this beautiful woman married to this devout man with these kids, and even though one is sickly, she names the second one accomplished and finished. So by all intents and purposes, you can look at Naomi and say, well, now this woman got everything going on. Great husband. She's awesome. They lived in Bethlehem, and if you go to my next slide, they lived in Bethlehem, Judah. And Bethlehem, Judah, Bethlehem means the house of bread. A very desirable place to be. It was a fertile place agriculturally. Figs and all sorts of things grew there. Almonds grew there. It was a place of abundance and provision, and this was God's territory. So you've got this wonderful couple, this devout man and this beautiful woman and these accomplished kids living in the house of bread. I say they were set. That's a good setup right there. If you're a woman and you're beautiful and you get yourself a devout man and you living in the place you're supposed to be living in, I'd say that's game, set, match. But how many of you know that just when you think you're set,
Right now,
something can step in? So what steps into their lives is a family that comes to the house of bread. So Elimelech, being the husband, has a decision to make. Does he stay in the house of bread?
All right.
Or does he leave, looking for provision elsewhere? Now, looking at this, you would think the man's name is God is King, and he's living in the house of bread. This should be a no-brainer.
right.
He's going to stay right where he is. But he doesn't. He decides to go down to Moab. Now, Moab had food at this time, but Moab was a pagan country. So while they had provision, they did not have God. They did not have God. Now, the house of bread temporarily had no bread, but it did have God.
All right.
So poor Elimelech makes a permanent decision based on a temporary problem. Have you ever made a permanent decision based on a temporary problem? And now you say, well, Sister Lisa, how do you know it's temporary? I know it's temporary because Bethlehem's name was the house of bread. And that name was ordained by God himself. So if God called it the house of bread, it didn't matter what it looked like, it was the house of bread. Now the man whose name was God is King should have said, you know what, I know Naomi and kids that there's no bread right now, but this is the house of bread, and I believe that God, who is my King, I'm going to stay right here and call it the house of bread until it's the house of bread. Because no matter what was going on, the name of the place didn't change. And oftentimes in our own lives, we will make a shift thinking that something changed. In actuality, it never changed. It never changed. What God said about my life remains what he said about my life. Despite what I did, despite what I done, despite what it looked like at times. There were times that there was no bread in the house of bread. The man whose name is God is King forgot that that same God was Jehovah Jireh. The God who would provide. He forgot that he was El Shaddai, the most and the all-sufficient one. He forgot these things because he took his eyes off of what it was, really, and looked at what was going on. And the minute you take your eyes off of what it looks like, what it's supposed to be, and turn it into what it looks like, you got a problem. Because the minute you do that, the enemy will come in and he will take you to the counterfeit place. He will take you to the counterfeit place. How do we know it's counterfeit? Because it looks like it's of God, but God's not there. Moab looked like it was a place to go. They had food. But they did not have God. And I know some side trips in my own life where I went to where something looked like it was good. But when I got there, the Spirit of the Lord was nowhere around. So poor Emmanuel, he does this. He goes and he forgets everything, who he is, forget his name, forget where he's supposed to be. And he goes on down there to Moab. Go to the next slide. He's there for 10 years, it said. And he dies. Actually, the biblical or the historical account of this, that they were down there, the family was down there 10 years, but it was 4 years in that Elimelech dies. And Naomi and the kids are left for another 6 years. So in the 10th year, her two sons, who did what they were not supposed to do as Israelite boys, they took wives in Moab. So there's one thing to go to a place and there's another thing to settle into. Okay?
All right.
You can go to a place, but that doesn't mean you need to settle there.
Okay.
You never want to settle in the counterfeit place. What does the scripture say? There's a way that seems right to a man, but the end is death. So they sojourned, but they didn't stay temporarily. They stayed permanently. They settled in. And her own sons, it says in the historical account, died as traitors. They actually joined the Moabite army and died fighting the Israelites. They died as traitors. So then here's Naomi. Her husband is dead. Her sons die as traitors. And she's left here, and the historical account says that when all of this happens and she loses everything, Naomi is about between 45 and 50 years old. She's somewhere in her late 40s. And now here she is, this woman. And she's at the intersection of a dead dream and an uncertain future. Have you ever been right there in your life and you look this way and it's some dead dreams?
Lord Jesus.
And you look this way, it's an uncertain future. And it's right at that place, Naomi makes a decision. Go to verse 6. Then she arose with her daughter-in-laws to return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in Moab how the Lord had visited his people in giving them food. Now what's interesting is Naomi is down there. Naomi's in a pagan country. They serve Baal. They don't even serve God. They're not thinking about God. They're not talking about God. They got a whole other system going on. Yet, the Lord gets a word to her. Right in her broken place. Right in that dark place. Have you ever heard a word?
Yeah.
When you were in a dark place?
All right now.
When I was studying this and I came across this, the Lord brought up my own experience about hearing the word of the Lord in a dark place. So if you allow me, I just want to testify. I had took my own side trip to Moab and left the things that I knew. And one night, I was in a club downtown. And I was drinking and drinking because I had this empty feeling. Just empty. I couldn't shake it, so I kept buying drinks, thinking that I could drink my way out of this. I'm like, well, I don't know what's wrong with me, but something's wrong with me, and I don't know. And I went and found a quiet corner. And I sat there, and all of a sudden, a word
Come on.
came to me. With all that music and all those people, a word came to me. And I heard the Spirit of the Lord say, isn't it amazing how lonely you feel with all these people? And I thought, okay, so I'm either too drunk or not drunk enough. Because I'm hearing people talking to me and they're not here. So I either need another drink or I need to stop drinking. I was getting ready to get up and get another drink. But the word came to me again as soon as I got up. And he said, isn't it amazing how lonely you feel in the midst of all these people? And as soon as I heard that word the second time, it literally was like scales fell off my eyes. And I looked around and I seen everybody and everything for what it truly was. And I seen myself for what I had truly become. And I was broken. And I had lost my dreams. And I had lost who I really was. And here I was, this single mom, and I had these two babies, 1 and 3 years old. And I was hurt. I didn't trust very many people. I kept trying to fill a hole that nobody could fill. But the Lord came in that club that night. And I went and I got my keys and I told everybody that was with me I was going home. To this day, I cannot tell you how I got home, because when I tell you I was drunk, I was very drunk. And I got home, and the Lord woke me up that next morning, and he said, you're going to church. I said, I am not going to church because, number one, I'm still drunk. And number two is I got the spins. And he said, no, you're going to church. And he covered me in my bedroom in December of 1990. That Sunday morning, he covered me.
All right, baby.
And he breathed on me.
Yes. My God.
And like Naomi right there, I said, I'm getting up and I'm getting back to the house of God.
Yeah.
You could have lost everything. You may have lost your children. You may have lost your husband. People could have left you. People may have stabbed you in the back. Maybe you exchanged your God dream for a lie. All you got to do is get up and get back to the house of bread. So Naomi, you know the story. She gets ready to get up, and the daughter-in-laws want to go with her, and she said, no, stay. And they said, no, we're going to go, but the one stays, and Ruth goes with her. And they get back, and they head back to Jerusalem. And can you go to next slide? It says in Ruth 1:19, so they both went out until they came to Bethlehem. And when they arrived in Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred and said, is this Naomi? Oh, goodness. The beautiful girl the agreeable, sweet girl. She comes back. Have you ever had to go back to a place and they go, girl, is that you? What in the world happened to you? Poor Naomi, who left with all of this promise, has to come back. Have you ever had to publicly face the reality of where your life is taking?
Yes, come on.
Face that the reality of your present doesn't match the promises of your past. I was reading this and I thought about, I said, I can identify with Naomi when you got to publicly answer for what your life has become. There was a situation, the Lord brought this up, I hadn't thought about this in years. There was a situation while I was in Moab. And I was at a club one night and we went, some friends of mine, we went with a couple of other friends, and this one friend started running her mouth, and she can't fight. Why she's running her mouth, I have no idea. She's running her mouth. And so she gets ready to get in this fight. And so me and my other friend, girlfriend line up, man, now you gotta fight, because you can't fight. And so everything spills out the club into the parking lot, and here I am, I'm fighting in the parking lot of the club. Me. And somebody said, they broke everything up, and somebody said, is that you, Lisa Manning? And I looked. They said, I know that ain't you fighting. And I was so ashamed. And it was in that moment I realized how far I had fallen. Because I was the leadership kid. I was the girl of promise. I was the girl that ran for Rose Festival. I was the girl that was May Queen. I was the girl that was in pageants. I was the girl that was mentored by the best people. I was the one that they always told, this one here, she's going to make it. This is the one. I had my dream. My dream was I was going to Spelman College, and I was going to major in business, and I was going to own my own advertising agency. And my goal was, by the time I was 30, I was going to be both in ebony and essence as one of the top black female executives in the country. That was my dream. I was on the Urban League Board of Directors at the age of 17, and I was the youngest board member in the United States at that time. I had connections all over the country. But I made a decision at 18 that changed my life. And the girl of promise no longer believed she was the girl of promise. And right when I made that decision, my dream died. I never went to Spelman. I was supposed to pledge Delta. I never pledged Delta. Never opened up my own advertising agency. Never flew all over the world doing the amazing things that I thought I was going to do. But I was in a parking lot of a nightclub fighting. And I realized that my dreams had truly died. And so Naomi, poor thing, she gets back. And everybody is saying, is that her? Oh, yeah, I understand, Naomi. Is that Lisa Manning? Really? She don't fight? Why should she fight? But Naomi responds, if you go to my next slide, verse 20. In verse 20 and 21, Naomi said, call me not Naomi, which means pleasant. Call me Mara, bitter. For the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went out full, but the Lord has brought me home again empty. Why call me Naomi, since the Lord has testified against me and the Almighty has afflicted me? Naomi was so broken and so in pain that she actually wanted to change her very identity. She no longer wanted to be identified as who she was in God. She wanted to be identified now by her pain. And women sometimes will do this where we don't want to be identified as who we are. We begin to identify what happened to us. And what happens to us becomes who we are. She said, I don't want to be beautiful anymore. I want you to know me as bitter. And as women, we take our pain and we put it around our neck like an identity badge. And we wear it all around for everybody to see. Hello, I'm the bitter one. Hello, I'm the ex. Yep, I'm the one he left. Yep, he cheated on me, I'm that girl. Yep, I'm the broken single mom. Yep. We take an event and we turn it into an identity. It was only an event, but now you've worn it and become an identity. It's become an identity to you.
Yeah, that's good.
And when something becomes an identity, you walk in that thing. And all your decisions are based off of now who you think you are. And so if you think you're bitter, all of your decisions become bitter. And I'm just angry. I'm just angry. All of your decisions are based from anger. Well, I'm hurt and they did it and I'm not getting over it. And all of your decisions come from that broken place. And Naomi walks and all the people are saying, oh my gosh, they could have been excited to see her, but she chose not to be excited to be back home. She just chose to say, don't even address me as that. I'm not her anymore. I remember when I didn't want anybody to call me Lisa Manning. Because I didn't want anybody to continue to remind me of my own failures. But the intentionality of God. The intentionality of God. Go to verse 22. It says, so Naomi returned and Ruth the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, with her, who returned from the country of Moab. And they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. Now that's significant when they came back. And there's no coincidence that they came back. They came back during the time of the barley harvest. Well, the barley harvest happened during the time of Passover. So she comes back when everybody is celebrating the Israelites' redemption and their freedom from bondage. Now, isn't that amazing? The Lord beckons her and tells her to come out right when it's time to celebrate coming out. So she's there during the Passover. And she thinks she's back just to come and to settle back home. God has a completely different plan for her. Like Bishop said last week, don't think that God brings you out and don't have plans to restore you. Poor Naomi thought she was coming back, and she was going to be Ruth's wingman. She's going to coach her in the how to get Boaz, and then she's going to be fine because remember, they don't have any male over there. And for a woman in this time not to have a male over them meant that it was really hard for them to get any kind of existence financially. This was a patriarchal society, so all of the substance came through the male. So when Naomi gets back to Bethlehem, she first identifies the male relative in the family that's going to redeem them. And then she kills her own dream and says, okay, it's not me, Ruth, you go get it. And I'm going to tell you how to do it. I mean, she worked that thing like a G. She told her exactly what to do. Girl, do this, go here, do this, pick this up, stand like this, drop this. When you're doing it wrong, no, drop it like this. See? Go lay at his feet, now lay it this way and that. But why was she doing this? Remember, she said, I'm bitter. Have you ever started taking care of other people out of your own bitterness? You become the bitter caretaker. And you're content to just live in the overflow of somebody else's blessing. All she wanted was a little mother-in-law sweet out back. That's all she wanted. She said, Ruth, you get him. You marry him. I go with the package. Just take care of me, build me a little something out back, and I'll be good. But he has a different plan. Go to my next slide. See, God is intentional. Go to chapter 4 and go to verse 13. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. And he went into her, and the Lord caused her to conceive, and she bore a son. And the women said to Naomi, Blessed be the Lord, who has not left you this day without a close kinsman, and may his name be famous in Israel. And may he be to you a restorer of life, and a nourisher and supporter in your old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you, who is better than you than 7 sons, have borne him. Then Naomi took the child and laid him in her bosom and became his nurse. And her neighbor women gave him a name, saying, A son is born to Naomi. Say, a son is born to Naomi. They named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David, the ancestor of Jesus Christ. Okay, so now wait a minute. What just happened here? What just happened here? I thought Ruth married Boaz, and Ruth gave birth to a son. Ain't that what it says? But what happened? What did they say? They said, Naomi has a son. How did Naomi get a son? She ain't had one labor pain, ain't walked a month being pregnant. How did she get the blessing? Do you know that there are times when the favor of God falls on your life and you get a blessing that you didn't even work for? What happened was the favor of God. That's what happened to her. She got a blessing that she didn't even labor for. But why did she get the blessing? And I'm getting ready to close with this. She got the blessing because of the bloodline. It was the bloodline. Ruth could not receive that blessing because the bloodline didn't go to Ruth. The bloodline went to Naomi. And it was through the bloodline that she was blessed. And so can I say for you, women of God and men of God, you're going to get some blessings coming up in this year that you didn't work for. But it ain't going to be because you labored for it. It's going to be because of your bloodline. It's going to be because of who you're connected to. It's going to be because of the bloodline of your Savior. The bloodline of Jesus. The bloodline of Jesus. Only in 2017, God's going to change you. What's going to change you? You may have been spending all of your time pouring into other people. Saying that you're just blessed to be a blessing. But can I tell you, like Naomi, God is about to sweep into your house. And he's about to change your future. What Naomi thought was over, it ain't over yet. She still had a future, and she still had a destiny. And what was it? It was her nurse in the bloodline of Jesus. Who am I talking to that needs a blessing that they didn't have? Oh, no, give you a blessing beyond anything that you can imagine. Not because of what you've done. He's pleased with that. But because of who you serve. But when you walk into that workplace and you walk among the very people that laughed at you, and they say, now wait a minute, how did you get that blessing? And you just say, it's in my bloodline. It's in my bloodline.
In this year,
I'm recovering it.